All right, we're live, everybody.
Hey everyone, welcome to AV Geeks at the Hunt Library, not at the Hunt Library. I'm Jason Evans Groth, Digital Media Librarian at NC State. This is our 12th semester of this series, which partners NCSU folks with Raleigh's AV Geeks to discuss vintage educational and classroom films. Why do we do this? Well, we know Skip Elsheimer, who is the founder of AV Geeks, is an NC State alum, and he has been for the last few decades collecting film made throughout the last century, mostly 16 millimeter educational, training, other sorts of how-to movies. He does an incredible job sharing them with the world, both through events like this and through things like stock footage. Watch at the end of every documentary that you see produced these days, you'll probably see AV Geek's name there. It has never failed. He currently houses, and this is a new number as of tonight, everyone, he currently houses over 35,000 such films at the AV Geeks archive here in Raleigh, and shares them, again, as stock footage for films and exhibits, as research material, and during public events like this. So tonight, our theme is So You're Going to College. And we're very excited to welcome our guest, Chester Brewer. Chester is in his 9th year as Assistant Director of the University Scholars Program here at NC State, where he helps students expand their horizons in and out of the classroom through explorations near and far. He has a BA in Romance Languages and a Master's in Outdoor Education. We're so glad to have him. And just real quick, there are over 200 AV Geeks compilations that are available for checkout from the libraries if you are an NC State community member and while the libraries are still open. For those of you who aren't, you can visit avgeeks.com or search for AV Geeks on YouTube or at archive.org to see some of those films, even if you're not a student or faculty member. This is the first show of the semester. We're so excited to be back, and I'm going to hand things over to Skip to kick us off.
Thanks, Jason. All right, so let me. I'm looking. I have like 1,000 windows open here, so yeah. So tonight we have special guest Chester Brewer, and one of the things that we wanted to do was to welcome new students and new scholars to our show by showing some films that are meant to be shown to incoming college freshmen, one from the 50s and one from the late 60s, early 70s. And these were shown maybe during freshman orientation, maybe during the first day that somebody came to the university. And they're trying to prepare people for what you're going to encounter. Like, what is it going to be like? You were in high school not that long ago. How is this going to be different? Trying to manage expectations a little bit. Try to rein in some behavior issues, maybe. So the first film is by Cornett, and Cornett made lots and lots and lots and lots of educational films over the years, covering lots of different things. And this one is called College, Your Challenge. So let's watch this.
I said to the coach, if you want to win that match on Saturday, why not put me up against their number one man? If you will, I said, I'll even skip the shindig on Friday night and catch up on my sleep.
Okay, big shot. What did the coach say?
Well, Howard, he said, if you even want to see that match on Saturday, you'd better start catching up on your analytic geometry.
Oh?
What are you writing there? Another weighty editorial for the Campus Gazette?
Not this time. I'm writing to my kid brother. He's in high school, you know.
Yeah, I know.
He's a great kid. He gave me some trouble while we were growing up, but, well, he's all right.
Yeah, he told me about all the things he did in high school.
He's looking ahead now, wondering about college.
That's fair enough. What have you written?
Well, here it is. Dear Bud, so you want to know what I think about college for you? Well, it's hard to say. And that's it so far.
Well, that's a big help.
Well, it is hard, Howie. Should he go to college even? What does he want to do in life? Can he go? And how about his grades?
How about his bank account?
And if so, what college should he go to?
Can't he talk those things over with his guidance counselor at school? That's who helped me decide about going on to college.
Well, he's talked to his counselor. Now he wants sort of an on-the-spot report from me. But college means so much. There's so many things. Where to begin?
Well, start with something easy, like, what colleges look like. I've been traveling with the team, and I've seen quite a few. Now, some colleges are small, like ours. With only one or two main buildings. Others are big, with building after building. You can go to school mid-southern Palms or perched up on a hill overlooking the ocean. Some campuses are so big, they have to give you a map so you can find your way around. Whatever kind of layout you're looking for in a college, you can find it if you scout around. Come to think of it, Ray, the size of a college and its location, they have a lot to do with the kind of life you lead while you're there.
Of course they do, Howie, but college is more than the campus and the buildings. It's inside the buildings. Take chemistry, for instance. The lab where you spend 5 hours a week doing experiments. Now, that's part of college. So are the people around you there. So is the professor, helping you with a suggestion, then leaving you to find out for yourself. Find out for yourself. Now, there's a real clue to understanding college. You're there with a lot of other people, but you're still on your own. Even in class, you're finding out for yourself. Oh, you're listening, yes, but you're working, thinking, learning quicker ways to get answers, checking your answers with the class and your teacher, finding out. In lecture classes, it's the same thing, finding out. Oh, it isn't easy. You can let it slip right by you. But you can find out what an expert thinks and what men know about an idea, a place, or a people. After class in the library, you're still on your own. It's your own time, and you spend it in the library because this is college, and you're here to find out. It goes on right in your own room, this business of finding out. You know, Howie, the more I think about it, college is a challenge to find out for yourself, with the help of teachers and books.
It's a challenge to me, all right. For me, the trick is keeping up with my studies and having time for sports, too. Half the time, I don't think I'll make the grade.
Yeah, but you really work at it. Why?
I don't know. I suppose it's because I have a lot of time and money invested in college, and I don't want to waste any. College can be a waste of time. You get out of it just what you put into it. That goes for studies and, well, take something I know more about. Basketball. It's here, but you don't get much out of it unless you really throw yourself into it. Work at it. It's another challenge. Then there's more to be had if you go after it. Sports that build you up physically. Sports that are less strenuous. Some break the routine by taking part in an intellectual sport.
And you know, there's a lot more to campus life. Being away from home, feeling that you're part of a school, and it all helps you to learn this business of living. Some find it in being with the gang or joining a sorority or fraternity. Some find it mixing with others at square dances or other social affairs. Some go in for music and dramatics, for fun or for serious interest. Many enrich their lives through religious experience while at college. So it really is a challenge to find out the kind of person you want to be, and to learn how to live with yourself and with others. I guess you can call it education for life.
All right. So you write your brother this, and he wants to come to college. Now, can he?
Of course he can, if it means enough to him. And you know that all around us here are fellas who work hard to put themselves through college. It means that much to them. It's no disgrace to wait on tables, but it is hard, working at a time when others are enjoying themselves, relaxing. Others work part-time in stores to pay expenses, and the college helps most of them get the jobs. College is harder this way, but it can be done. Another way to get help is through scholarships, and there are all sorts of them. Scholarships based on financial need, special scholarships for special fields of interest, scholarships for doing research work, special aids for veterans, even scholarships for studying abroad. For many fellows, ROTC is a way to combine college with military training. This makes going to college harder, yes, but it makes it possible. So that's why I say Bud can go to college if it means enough to him.
And what does it mean? We've talked about buildings and classes, teachers and studies, activities and campus life. It's all a part of something, but what is it?
Are you going to answer?
Not me. I'm no philosopher.
Don't kid yourself. You know why you're here.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe this sounds snobbish, but as I've grown up, it seemed to me that I could always tell a college man when I met one. He had something. I don't know what it was. I don't know what you'd call it. I only know that I wanted to be that kind of man.
I don't know what you call it either, but it's there. And you know, out of our colleges will come the future leaders of the nation and the world. Did you ever stop to think about it? The work of thousands of men and women has made our country great. College-trained men, famous for their contributions in politics and government, science and industry, religion, education, and human relations. And the leaders of tomorrow will be trained in college. You know, people realize this. This building was given by one man because he believed in what college means to the future. Other places, all the buildings were paid for by taxpayers of a state. Many of them didn't go to college, but they helped build the college because through it, they were building the leaders of the future. The future. That's really what college is. It's your preparation to meet the bigger challenge that is the future. Isn't that right, Howie?
I'll buy that. But right now I'd better crack that geometry, or there won't be any future for this boy.
Well, I'll be ready to shut up and start writing in a minute.
And tell that brother of yours that college is work. It's work at this desk, and it's work sweeping those miles of corridor every night. But it's a lot of fun, and I wouldn't miss it for anything.
Okay, I'll tell him that. And I'll also tell him that college is ending and the most rewarding experience I've ever known. As for you, Bud, what about college for you? Well, it's hard to say. It's your decision, Bud. It's your challenge.
So, Chester, is college man still a term that people would use nowadays?
In my experiences, I don't think so. So, in this time period that this film is made, I see the college man ideal as a comparison between, a broad-reaching liberal arts education versus a vocational education. I think that in the time frame of our country, at least, that's sort of a dividing point between general public education that lots of people are participating in versus vocational education. And I think that that's a strange distinction that we don't hear as much about anymore currently in our country. The other thing that I would say that concept, that term, college man, makes me think of is like Oxford University, Cambridge University, an Oxford man. Like that is a term you might still hear. He's an Oxford man versus a Cambridge man.
Interesting. What were some other things that caught your eye as far as how we talked about university and college back then versus and preparing for it versus what you say nowadays?
Preparing for it, and this might just show that I'm not as involved in sort of college recruit. Like I'm not helping with college recruitment as much as like current students in college, but like I don't remember there being as much conversation around how you pay for college. The guys in this video talk a lot about, oh, you can pay for college. There's nothing wrong with working while you're in college to help pay for it. And I know that there are students that do that currently, but I don't think there's the same conversation around that aspect of the college experience, working while in college. I think it's something that everybody more or less sort of expects to do, if nothing else, than to get experience while you're in college. The other aspect, honestly, that sort of stood out to me that I wouldn't say is taboo currently, but that we don't talk about in the same ways is, in the film, they talk about one of the recreational opportunities or self-development opportunities being religious experience. And unless you're going to a small college that's has a religious background, most universities are not going to mention that as a part of your college experience, not in the broadest sense anyway.
Yeah, and I guess this was made for general audiences, so the likelihood that someone might go to a smaller college that's sponsored or underwritten by a church was pretty high, I would say, back in the day. Versus,
I would think so too.
Yeah, the major state-funded universities or private universities. What were some other things that you noticed?
Yeah, just in general, it is a real male-centric video. I actually chuckled the first time I watched it. The tennis-playing roommate, his body language is so macho. It's so he's a conqueror. He's always lifting that leg up and putting his chin on his hand because he's looking out at his future into the distance. So I remarked, it's very male dominated. There's also something though about the environments that they show in the video. Those campuses that we see in the video, I'm presuming for the period are state of the art, but they're also something. How would I phrase it? Those buildings are our version of like the buildings around the Court of Carolinas, like
right.
But they're new and they're they are. Whereas we see them as sort of like those are the foundational buildings, those are the cornerstones of the campus environmental identity. There's something interesting about that. Yeah. That those are the everyday sort of, or for us, they're everyday sort of buildings, but for them, it's like those are, the foundation.
Yeah, somebody commented on the comments that said that the dorm rooms basically look the same from the 50s to the 80s, and that's
absolutely nothing has changed.
Certainly the case. The outlets are different, but that's about it.
There was something else I was thinking about. Keep going.
Oh, I'm just saying that so is there a version of this that you show to your scholars or that you show to incoming freshmen? Is there, or do you have like a YouTube link that they like, here, click on this and watch the experience, the NC State experience?
And you know, and that's honestly more a function of the fact that the office that I work in serves, you know, a smaller subset of the overall college population. But I think there is, understandably, in the modern age, more of an emphasis on not the unity of the college experience, but the diversity of the college experience. Like, it could be literally anything you want it to be. That if you really sort of take the time to put things in motion, it can be almost anything you want it to be. And so I think it can be difficult to find the common thread outside of, you know, academics and some type of work experience. But, you know, they mentioned study abroad in this video, and that made me smile, because in the 50s they're talking about, you know, studying abroad in Western Europe, but now study abroad is everywhere. You know, you can go, well, when there's not coronavirus, I mean, you can go to Africa, you can go to parts of Asia. So no, we don't have a common thread video that we share with students, because our emphasis is it can be as different and uniquely tailored to your experiences or your interests as you want it to be. So I think that is different between now and then.
So I have a question for you about the University Scholars Program. I don't know if that really existed when I was in college in the mid 80s. It might have, but is it a situation to where you're helping the students explore beyond just the classroom experience, like explore the other things that a university can offer, and kind of bringing in much more than just sitting in a classroom?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And we do that in a variety of ways. One is through a class that all the scholars take called Scholars Forum, where we bring in guest lecturers, guest performers, you know, a variety of experts from different disciplines to talk about what it is they're doing or what they've achieved or accomplished. So that's sort of one way to broaden students, you know, I guess disciplinary perspectives, because we have students from all majors, but these talks are being led by artists and scientists and politicians, and, you know, trying to help students make a connection between what they're learning in the classroom and what it's like to be in a larger world outside of the education bubble that you live in for so long. The other thing that we ask all our students to do are these high impact experiences before they graduate. And a lot of it is things that any student on a college campus could do, you know, an internship, a co-op, study abroad, volunteering, those sorts of things. But the difference is that we're really charging our students with this purposeful reflection piece, again, to help them understand how to make the connection between what you learned outside of the classroom and what's happening in the classroom, how those two interact, how they overlap, and how those skills are transferable back and forth. I mean, one of my favorite mottos, and any student that travels with me or takes a class with me knows, is that school gets in the way of education a lot of the time. That's my opinion.
I hear you, brother. I would say
Schooling
that
gets in the way of education.
Yeah, my career, you know, my college career was a long time. It was like 7.5 years, because I changed majors, and I went from computer science into school of design, where you had you had to take one studio a semester, and I was basically paying for it, you know, working part-time jobs and things like that. But I ended up taking a lot of electives of things that I just thought that, you know, you look at my transcript and it's like a giant pile of stuff that doesn't really apply to my degree, but I was just so fascinated by it. And I would say that those are the things that shape my path. Like, my interest in what I do now is totally related to what these extracurricular classes that I took and these other experiences that I was doing, because I realized that this is a phenomenal way to see all these people and do all these really fascinating things.
Yeah. No, and there's something really to be said about, I mean, yes, college and classes, it is important and that's why you're here. But it's also the first time that you really sort of get to choose your own adventure, right? You get to pick and choose how you're going to spend your time and what you're going to focus your attention and your energy on. And I think that can be really liberating if people really pay attention to it.
All right. So this next film we're going to watch, we rocket ahead maybe 20 or so years. And this is another film that kind of talks about what your job is as a student. It's called Occupation Student. And I want to say it came out in 69 or early 70s. I can't remember the actual copyright year on it. But this is a little bit more hip. And it's more diverse. There's more diversity as far as gender, at least.
Yeah.
And so here's Occupation Student.
The older you get, the faster time flies. In grade school, the days may seem endless. In junior high, they go a little faster. And in high school, the tempo picks up even more, with sports and driving and dating. But it's not until the first year of college that the pace of life hits its frenzied peak. That first year is a big step on the way from boyhood to manhood. Every student and every campus is different. Yet they're enough alike so that what happens on one campus can show some of what's happening on most campuses, and can provide an important look during a time when the public's view of the university is often as confused as a new freshman's first impressions. This is the story of Richard Baines Smith, a bright young man from San Diego, California. But it's also the story of every college freshman. It was filmed at the University of California, Riverside, but it's the story of changes taking place at every college. It's about the relationships between faculty and student, the use of beer and barbiturates, the search for a new pattern, change on campus, and change in an individual. It's a look at a demanding, full-time job, the occupation of student.
Well, the first day I got here, you were supposed to come about 3. I got here about 11 o'clock in the morning. And I walked around, just all around the campus. I'd never been here before. So I just took myself on a complete tour, and so I really, I was really looking around and, exploring, seeing what was around.
The first few weeks are lonely and hard, and maybe that's good, because there's plenty to learn. Who hands out meal tickets, what the professors want, how to find your way in the bookstore.
You come to this place and you realize, well, I don't know anybody. There was one girl from my high school who goes here, and I didn't even know her. You don't feel at ease, really. I would go out because I didn't feel like sitting around a room doing nothing.
Billy or John or something of this sort.
In class, Richard finds himself with some of the brightest students in the state, and the teachers expect them to perform.
At Aunt Mamie's Thanksgiving turkey dinner, something of this sort.
Boy, math is a lot tougher than it was in high school, so there's a lot more studying for that. You don't go home and do your homework in maybe 5-10 minutes anymore. When you have an integration problem, you work and you work and you work.
If classwork were the only pressure on them, students like Richard would breeze through college like fire through an old Christmas tree. But there are other pressures. Away from home, often for the first time, freshmen have to make decisions about classes and actions that may affect their entire lives.
There's just nobody that's going to tell you how to live your life anymore. And, you know, you depend on yourself a lot more. You learn a lot you wouldn't learn any other way. And there's the whole thing about drugs and liquor and all that. You just learn to make your own decisions. I think that's the whole thing about college. Everything kind of relates to that. I know where I want to go. Like, I want to be a business administration major, definitely. I hope to go to law school and minor in computer sciences.
That's what he wants now, when he's not worried about boosting grades or booting footballs. The school that Richard chose is not a party school. It has a high scholastic rating, and over half of its graduates plan to go on toward advanced degrees. But 6,000 healthy young men and women don't live just for their studies. Students today are aware of what's happening, and they want to be a part of it, no matter what. This is Donna St. Amand, one of Richard's friends.
I want to experience a lot of different things, and I don't know, just do everything different. And then I'm finding out what I like in life, you know, and exactly. I don't really care. People don't matter that much, you know. Sure, I want them to like me and everything, but it doesn't matter anymore so much what they feel, because I feel that everything's going to be changing eventually.
Mm-hmm. You want to get married?
I want to get married. I don't know. I thought I wanted a career when I first came here.
What do you think you lab technicians are doing?
That was Carolee. At first I was going to be a doctor.
You?
Mm-hmm. Then I was
I
going to
didn't
be a
know
math
that.
major. Yeah. I was a doctor until I started filling out the applications, and it was a lot easier to put down math.
Richard's experience with adult activities was pretty limited when he was home. And now that he's on his own, he's beginning to learn, sometimes the hard way, that too much partying can mean grief in the morning. Still, when there's work to do, you've got to get up, no matter how you feel. Richard is doing well in a computer course this quarter. The computer has become such an important part of civilization that the graduate who doesn't know how it works and what it can do will soon be as out of date as an engineer without a slide rule. Students here use a computer in many regular courses. They write and punch cards for their own programs, and if they've asked the right questions in just the right way, they sometimes get useful answers from the machines. Richard's success with the computer doesn't help in calculus. He's still having trouble. That could mean real trouble if professors are concentrating on research and publications and don't have time left for students. But Richard is lucky. The major emphasis here, as at many schools, is still on teaching, and professors schedule time to work with students individually. After Richard pulled a D in one math quiz and flunked another, he asked for help from his professor.
Now, the volume would be what, in terms of the various dimensions?
It would be this outer part minus the inner part.
Okay, fine. We're going to have the volume of the entire disk minus the
That
volume.
conference cleared up some key points and helped Richard recover enough to pass the course with a C. No one gets athletic scholarships at this school. That kind of scholarship is going out of style at many schools. So its teams will probably never make the big time. But it hosts a major tournament every year and does have a pretty fair swim squad. The sports that really attract support, though, are the ones in which a majority of students can participate. This campus is located an hour from the beach, an hour from a major music center, about 50 miles from a desert resort, and not far from fairly good mountain skiing. In his first year here, Richard wants to try it all, which he won't be able to do. And he won't make the ski team either, but at least he keeps trying. Like most college towns, Riverside has no Sunset Strip or Times Square. So most of the entertainment takes place right on campus. Some of it has drawn praise from critics.
Listen to gramophone record. Well, let's finish. Oh, where are you going? Are you going out? To find the YW? Well, I'll come too. What? I'll come as well. Where? To find it. What? The YW.
Richard even tries medieval music. He's polite, but he still prefers the sounds of his own times. The exciting thing about a university is that there's always so much going on. Everyone is concerned with his own things, and yet, somehow, most are seeking similar goals. Knowledge, the ability to think clearly and critically, and a workable, developing philosophy of life. A good university doesn't just confirm conventional knowledge. It opens up minds to new and better ideas. So it should be expected that bright students, questioning old established ideas in math and science, will ask some penetrating questions about society, too. These questions have taken the form of loudly voiced student dissatisfaction about some courses and policies. These arguments often produce changes in the way things are done, because at this school, there is a tradition of loudly airing and listening to opinions on every side of almost every question. This is Philip Luce, an outspoken conservative.
They kept espousing a very strong left-wing position, and they were never censored.
Invited speakers at the regular Wednesday noon convocations are selected by a joint student-faculty committee. The opinion of the speakers ranges all the way from the conservative Luce, through Charles Evers, to Timothy Leary, the popularizer of LSD and other so-called mind-expanding drugs.
There are still a lot of people around who are feeling uptight. I submit to you that the hedonic gap is the only conflict in human life.
Many in the overrated speakers, such as Timothy Leary, proposes potentially disastrous action to bearded, blue-jean-garbed students. But these college men and women don't believe everything they hear. They know the dangers, as well as the supposed benefits of drugs.
No, he turned it around and played word games with it, the guy that answered them. I mean, he turned the question around so that everybody laughed, and he never really answered the question. But you can screw up your life.
Well,
at a bull session in Richard's room following Leary's talk, the subject also turns to the problems of black power and violence in the nation.
Like, a lot of guys have never been in the ghetto, and they don't know what violence, real brute violence is.
Like many schools, UC Riverside has been recruiting black and Mexican American students for several years. The idea is to make the number of blacks and Chicanos in the student body more representative of the general population. An active black students union here persuaded the administration to help publish a black literary magazine. Black students were elected homecoming queen and student body president, but they are far from satisfied.
What we're asking for now is a Black Studies department. And most black people, specifically black people, are going on notions that have been handed down to them by white people who didn't really understand what they were studying about or looking at. And so
Chancellor Ivan Hinderaker discussed the Ethnic Studies program with other administrators.
I think that we should have been at this a long time ago. I think that every campus where this has not blown up is living on borrowed time.
After long and sometimes heated discussions, the faculty and administration created both a Black Studies department and Mexican American Studies program. One way to ensure that the school responds to the needs of all the students is to appoint members of all groups to responsible jobs. Arthur Martinez, for example, is in charge of special programs. Booker Williams is director of financial aids. Richard doesn't care whether Mr. Williams is black or white. He wants to know whether he'll get a short-term loan or not. And he's worried about how he'll fare in the difficult courses of this last quarter of the freshman year. There are other things to consider besides flasks and forensics and formaldehyde. It's springtime. Spring is a cruel time at college. The smell of new-mown grass and the warm breezes are relaxing. Flowers are blooming, and there's an almost overpowering desire to do nothing. Yet it's in springtime that the whole year rushes to conclusion. Richard is still troubled about his grades, his girlfriend, draft status, and plans for next year. His goals are changing too. He now thinks he may go to a theological seminary when he graduates, but he's not at all sure. And the fact that he is still undecided is not necessarily bad, because the purpose of the university is to arouse interest and help put new ideas into play. And that is just what has happened. Richard Baines Smith has changed since last September. He's more confident, he understands the world a little more, and he is beginning to see where he fits in. And Richard, whose occupation for at least another 3 years will be that of student, is beginning to see what the job is all about.
So the credits got a little psychedelic there at the end. You were saying thanks to Timothy Leary showing up in the middle of the film.
Yeah, that guy.
So, folks who are tuning in, if you have questions for Chester Brewer, either about what he does with the University Scholars Program, or that he's a certified wilderness first responder, please feel free to mention it in the comments, and I will relay them to him. So,
I think Jason forgot to mention that, actually.
Oh, yeah.
So that'll be interesting. Yeah.
He was trading me some interesting stories about being a certified wilderness first responder. But But so what's your impression with this film compared to the last one? I mean, we jumped ahead. So this was 1969. The last one was probably mid-50s. So we jumped ahead 20 plus years.
The first thing that jumped out is, it is indicative of the era in terms of some of the content and some of the subject matter that they're trying to make sure that potential students know. It's sort of a coded language, right? It's like hey, we're hip because we understand that current students might be thinking about activism. They might be thinking about diversity-related issues. They might be thinking about, frankly, in this video, drugs and alcohol are mentioned in a way that that video from the 50s was certainly not going to be talking about.
Right.
So those are probably the three main things that jump out as unique to this time period that this video was coming from.
Yeah, and I was wrong, by the way. Barbiturates are actually downers; they're not speed. But the fact that they mentioned that barbiturates in beer, it's fascinating.
That those are the things, and now when students come to college, we talk about it in a really different way. Different colleges take different approaches, but one approach is the complete abstinence-only shame approach, and one is the learn to be responsible. You're an adult. You're learning to make decisions for yourself. If you're going to do these things, you be responsible about it. And this video was just like, I mean, there's beer, there's barbiturates, there's LSD on campus. There's all these things happening, and we know that, and you probably know that. So just be aware.
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, so Marion posted it as a question, talking about student activism. Certainly, this film addresses that and has it mention the fact that at that time there was a lot of social issues. Is that something that you talk about with your students and kind of encourage them to participate in, or is it kind of just...
and that one, I love that question. So part of it is sort of the really in between the lines, sort of like, PC is not the right word, but like there's an overarching university, principle, right? Which is like, we're not here necessarily to instigate those sorts of things, but as they arise, the university as an entity wants to stay neutral in many regards. But a unique part about my position is like, I get to interact with student leaders in a way that more often than not, they come to me and tell me, this is what I'm passionate about. This is where my activism lies. I will say, in my almost 10 years on campus, there's definitely a resurgence of that. And I think there's a new conversation around what it means to be an activist. When I first started on campus, I think it was in sort of a lull period. I think that activism looked like tweeting your opinions and ideas about certain subjects, and that was sort of enough. But I think that the level that students are engaging in a variety of issues, they begin to critique each other, right, and how people participate in what activism is and what it means to be truly engaged in those things. So I think that it has increased. I think it's going to continue to increase, and that it's going to move. That the pendulum of involvement is swinging back to a more in real life involvement, away from I could make a change online. Well, maybe you could for a period of time, but now these things they seem more visceral and more involved in the real world.
Right. So one of the things that we talked about while we were watching this was the challenges, the difference between the 50s, 1969, 70, and now. And like what was happening like a year ago, 2 years ago. Well, now, okay, So now everybody's college experience, for the most part, is going to become them watching college and having that experience through a laptop screen. What are some things that you think? And I ask this because a lot of people that we have here that are watching this have kids, and the challenge is like, how do you get the kids to not just immediately go to YouTube after they've done their studies? What are ways to maybe engage or interest students in some of the things that you were interested in them in before by having them physically attend these things?
I have a couple of ideas about that. The first one, I think, my initial gut reaction is that I think as administrators and teachers, we actually overthink this a little bit. I don't fully adhere to this idea of digital natives, but what I will say is that students of common interests and common likes know how to find each other, and that either encouraging that as an educator or finding ways to enhance that is a natural, simple path to integrating this sort of experiential education outside of the screen. So, if a student is really jazzed about wind instruments, they know how to find other students that are into that. That part's not hard. I think the challenge becomes, currently, do you meet up in person? Do you have online jam sessions? Do you? But I think that they're sort of a step ahead of us, and that as educators, we're like, oh, we could formalize this process. I just don't always think that that's necessary. I think sometimes it's just too much. The other thing that I was going to say, something that I'm really passionate about, that I think helps students in all of those facets, is mindfulness. I teach a mindfulness course to a small group of students each semester, and I think that that's a way to bring them. It's funny because the class is being offered online this semester, but even through that format, they're still walking away after each session going, oh, I was really fully aware of my surroundings today, or I was really fully aware of like how I felt today. So I think turning the lens, so to speak, the opposite direction, and having students wherever they are be mindful of themselves, of their surroundings. I think that's a cornerstone to bridging the gap between the screen and your real life. Yeah.
Nice. I'm looking to see if there's any other comments that people have had. What do you think that these films that we just watched missed, that, or just didn't talk about, that we do talk about to students who are coming to college?
A big one that we talk about a lot right now is mental health. I think mental and personal health are something, at least at NC State, we talk about that a lot in a lot of different ways, both before and during coronavirus. NC State in particular has this huge push for physical education and physical movement and physical health, and mental health has been very close behind in the last couple of years. So I think that's probably one thing. I think another thing, something that I think has gone in the opposite direction, and I could be wrong, but from where I sit, something that has gone the opposite direction has been town and gown relationships. I feel like in the video from the 50s, like, you probably could get more of a sense of like where a college is situated and how students interact with the larger community. Universities don't exist in a vacuum. They're surrounded by people who live and work in a town. Either they work for the university or they don't. NC State does have, town and gown relations, but it's not a focal point, I wouldn't I wouldn't say, not in a really broad context. There are lots of little tributaries that leak out from the university into the community in a variety of ways, but it's not a cohesive feeling, if that makes sense.
Right.
And another difference, well, those are really the main ones. You know, another one really would be diversity. I think that we saw that happening progressively. You know, the one in the 50s, that's a bunch of white folks in that video. And the video in the 60s and 70s, the narrator makes a really specific point to say, you know, at this university, there are African American students, there are Chicano students. Look at us. And now, you know, every university that's doing anything with anybody really wants to emphasize the importance of diversity and making sure that all voices are heard. So that would be probably the third difference, I think.
Right. You know, with Coronet, I think it was a little bit of laziness on their behalf in that their studios were based in a white suburb of Chicago. So that's who they just pulled from. And they were like, oh, this little college is near us, and that happens to be white too. So they didn't really have people of color in their films for a while. Now that changes again in the 60s when it's obvious that it's important.
Right.
But yeah, it's kind of a little lazy on their behalf. Somebody did ask a question here. Both of the films we just watched are structured, controlled representations of campus life. Have you seen any other representations, say, Real Genius, of college life that you like? They're talking about the feature film Real Genius with Val Kilmer, which is actually, I really like that film a lot. It's funny you mentioned that
film has a lot going on. Yeah. Val Kilmer has a lot going on in general in his life right now. If you haven't heard about Val Kilmer lately,
it's a great film, and surprisingly, I actually have the woman who made the film, the director. I actually have a film that she made, an early film that I got that I've been trying to contact her to get back to her, but that's an aside. I mean, I gotta say that my impression of college was very much influenced by Animal House and then all the TV shows that followed that were basically ripoffs of Animal House. And not that I was a partier, but I love the whole concept of a college prank a lot. And I read an article about these elaborate college pranks at Caltech, and just thought that was an amazing, that college was a playground for doing stuff like that. And maybe did some bad behavior because of that. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say. Statutes of limitations have passed, but I'm not going to go into details about that. But I don't know. What about you guys? Chester and Jason?
Now I'm realizing, you know, Skip and I went to college in different eras, but, you know, when I was in high school, the films I remember are about high school. I don't remember many films about college. Like, I remember Clueless, which is, that's a high school film. And I remember, like, 10 Things I Hate About You. That's a high school film. I don't remember a really standout.
I think they burned out on that whole, like, college thing. Like, Revenge of the Nerds was maybe the last one. They were like, all right, we're done.
Yeah, so I don't have a really sort of standout college experience film. Yeah, sorry.
That's fine. Jason, what about you?
What a question. Back to School, the Rodney Dangerfield movie.
Oh, right. That came out while I was in college, yes.
I was a little too, I wasn't allowed, I was too young to watch Revenge of the Nerds 1 because it was rated R. But I could watch Revenge of the Nerds 2 because it was PG-13, and Back to School was PG-13. And I think Back to School really did influence my desire to go to house parties where bands like Oingo Boingo might be playing,
right?
And to be an English major. Like, there was something about like the hallowed halls of Rodney Dangerfield practicing poetry that made me really excited about being in a place where like any loser could get into poetry, you know, like it actually worked on me. I should probably do a podcast about it or something.
Yeah.
That was a good question. Yeah, I think, you know, the films that I watched that I was impressed by about college don't age well, certainly. But yeah, back to school is pretty good. Pretty good. All right, Jason, you want to?
I want to thank both of you for doing this. Chester, thank you so much for jumping in. This was a last minute idea from the AV Geeks team like last week. Thank you so much for being a part of it. We love working with you. We love working with the Scholars Program. We look forward to when we do get to do this in person. Of course, we get to see so many of the folks that you work with, and they're such good participants. So thanks for keeping us a part of that, and then for being an official part of the AV Geeks team now. And I want to remind everybody to visit avgeeks.com for more info about what AV Geeks does, and also to check out compilations there. And also, if you can get into if you are a student or a faculty or staff member at NC State, we do have physical DVDs that you can borrow and watch, but feel free to be safe too and watch them online. And we're doing our best. So come into the library, say hi behind the plexiglass, and check those out for a couple months and enjoy it. Our next show is on Friday, September 4th. So we're really in this now. And it's an early one. It's 3:00, little experiment, and it's called Vote and the Choice is Yours, featuring Professor Natalie Bullock Brown. Extremely timely, and it features a single movie, an incredible North Carolina-made movie from the 60s about voting rights. I highly recommend tuning in. Until then, you know, check out some cool old educational films online or through libraries comps, and maybe even stop by at lunch every day to see Skip showing 16mm movies while you enjoy your frozen Stouffer's pizza. Or whatever it is you choose to
There's a very high percentage of people having Stouffer's French bread pizzas, which is really fascinating. I totally forgot about those. So, but thank you, Chester, and thank you, Jason. And we will see you guys again soon. Take care.
Cool. See y'all.